press the record button here. So it's actually recording the session now. So for those who don't tune in tonight, it won't be the end of the world because you'll be able to watch the session later. So before I kick on then with some things that I want to share with you guys, which will be related to personal learning statement number 4. Any other queries, questions that people have got in relation to where they're at, where they're moving to? Or are we all pretty good? And okay. Can I ask you to interrupt me? If you've got a query or a question, you can either type in. Yeah, thanks, Mario. That's great. No problems at all. Let's do that. Let's aim to have no class next week because it's the mid-semester break, and then we'll have a catch-up session on the 3rd in that evening, which will be given we've got the public holiday on the Monday. I'm more than happy for people to, if they're coping and going in the direction they are, then that's fine, but we can be coming together for that as well. So let me share the screen. You can see just how organized my desktop is. You wouldn't have expected it to be looking like anything else, I wouldn't have thought. Let me get rid of some of this stuff here. So it's...
So Colin, while you're tidying up your desktop,
I'm not going to tidy it.
the way that we will provide everything to you at the end is it's sort of in one sort of document. So everything that we've done will all come together, and we'll have the different my brain's gone blank. The opportunity or the problem, and then we'll go into the risk chart and the environmental one, and then we'll go into the sort of rundown of our results, and then finalize it in a summed up sort of version of writing. Is that the scope you see?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's up to you to decide how you want to organize it in terms of the formatting, but I'm very happy for you to put it into whatever format you want to put it into.
Okay, and there would be no word count to anything because it's obviously there's diagrams, there's different graphs. It's pretty much an open.
That's right. Yeah. Look, it says in the unit outline, okay, let's have 750 words, but that's just I have to put a number. The university requires me to put a number. If it takes you 7,500 words, I'm not going to have a problem.
Okay.
And you can format it in whatever way you want. Most people won't need to use any academic referencing. If you've used some secondary data, you might want to, have a reference to that in maybe an appendix, or at least just at the footnote, or it really doesn't matter how you do it, as long as I can see where that secondary data's come from. Otherwise, I mean, sometimes people will give me copies of their survey sheets or something like that. Okay. You don't have to. It's entirely up to you, whatever you think rounds out the case the best for you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
What I wanted to have a quick chat to you about today is one of the challenges we have when we think, and certainly when we reflect upon ourselves as being entrepreneurial, is that we are all different. And we're different characters. When I read your reflections, I can see something different, and many of you will actually communicate the nature of that difference to me. But we don't always take the time to reflect on just how different we are. You're going to have an opportunity to get up and do a pitch at the end of the semester, and the way that you might normally pitch could be governed by your own personal preferences. And I wanted to really tackle those today. You've most probably in the workplace setting discussed some of these issues before, and I'm going to discuss them in a really simplistic way, but it's simplistic through design because it's very digestible. It's very easy for you to be able to actually take on what we're going to do over the next few minutes and make sense of it. and it's very digestible in that it's operationalizable instantly relative to other people. Whereas other things like Briggs-Myers and other such things, you can learn something about yourself very hard to understand and identify who the other people are that you might have to interact with and how you might have to change things. So we did some of this stuff at the beginning of the year. We had our cow that came up. We counted the Fs. I won't run through all of this. It's mostly a little bit too difficult to do in the computer format we've got, and it doesn't actually matter. I'll leave this one with you for a minute though. Maybe just work your way through this as the screen changes.
Colin, we can't see anything except 2 grey panels.
Ah, 2 grey panels.
Yeah.
That's a bit weird.
At the top, we can kind of see something going on, but it's like a postage stamp. And then the 2 big grey panels would be where I think you are hoping it should be.
Okay. Let me get out of this bit then.
Okay.
Did you see anything on the slides originally or not?
Sorry, I kind of, no, I don't think so. No, Lily said no.
No.
That's interesting. So can't see anything at the moment?
Well, at the top, we can see a tiny little screen, like a postage stamp, above the 2 grey panels. Now it's gone. Okay, that looks better. Now we can see a PowerPoint presentation.
All right. That's pretty weird. It's obviously, it doesn't want to play. I put it into play mode. It obviously doesn't want to go into play mode, but yeah, that's all right. We can do it artificially, I suspect. Okay. This would be close enough. So one of the challenges we've got is that we're all creative in different ways. You know, some of you are great at sports. Some of you are great at talking. You think about someone like Bill Clinton, you know, despised by one half of America, loved by the other half, and yet has an ability to talk to everybody. Darwin had an ability to change the way we actually thought about how man came to be on this planet and stay on the planet, but he didn't present any scientific facts. It was all metaphors and all stories. Picasso was able to change the way we thought about art. Instead of it being a beautiful landscape and something like this, we have sports people who defy logic in their sports. We have people who write music. We have people who are brilliant with maths. And we know that there's all of these different ways of knowing and of demonstrating intelligence. And yet, unfortunately, of course, we only sometimes favour one type of intelligence. Now, all of these people, you know, let's say that they all lived in the current era, can become millionaires through their own individual intelligences. Now, I'm not going to bore you with this stuff, although I'll challenge you with this one. If this was one word, what would the one word be? Jump in and have a guess, guys.
Could you please repeat the question? Sorry.
If this was one word, if these 2 pictures represented one word, what would that one word be? What's the first picture of?
A fan.
A fan. What about the second picture?
Daisy.
Daisy.
Flower. Yeah.
So what would you get if your brain automatically combined those 2 words? What would you get?
Are we thinking daisy or flower?
The two words.
So the daisy being the word you're after, not a flower.
Second, yeah, the daisy is the second word.
Okay, so
Fan's the first word.
well, Lil just said fantasy, fan daisy.
Beautiful work, Lil. Beautiful work.
Got it. Well done.
Did you have to think that through, Lil, or did it just come to you automatically?
Just came, she said.
Yeah. So some people will look at an image like this and their brain will just do the work for them. That subconscious process happening underneath the surface, and we just get fantasy. It just happens. Other people would much rather it if we actually played around with some numbers, right? We just put some equations on here and some algebra. It'd be much easier if we just dealt with that. Other people, you know, you look at this image on the screen and something looks like there's some movement there. But of course, there's no movement there, yeah? So nothing's actually moving on the screen except your brain's telling you something's moving. Because if you look at any one of the circles, you'll see that there's no movement. It's only when you look into the middle that everything seems to be moving around it. Like here, if I ask you to count the black dots, right? And yet there's no black dots, right? Only white dots. If I show you that, some people read the word, other people see the black shape, yeah? We did our triangle before, and the whole point of going through this process was to sort of, and this is a very truncated version of it, is just to remind you that our minds are constantly on automatic pilot, constantly. Every minute of the day, unless we find a mechanism to switch them off, they're constantly on automatic pilot. So when you're thinking about designing your research questions, when you're thinking about going out and talking to people, something in your mind is just saying, nothing to see, move along. And that's what helps us get through the day. All this complexity. So we have this world that we interact with, and yet our brain over many, many years, from when we were a very small young infant, has developed these patterns, and we've developed ways in which we individually and uniquely understand and interact with the world. And the problem is this incredible self-organization that our brain does stops us from being very mindful of who we are and how we interact with other people. And as from an entrepreneurial perspective, this is a pretty bad thing. If we meet master salespeople, people who are really, really good at selling, they don't live in this world. They live in a different world because they've found a way to disconnect themselves from that automatic organization, and they ask questions all the time. Every time they meet people, they're asking themselves questions so that they can mindfully change the way they think. Now, the challenge we've got here is that as nascent entrepreneurs, so people who are thinking about doing something, we must be very mindful of what's actually happening. Because to the extent that we're not, whatever mistakes we made yesterday, we're very likely to be able to repeat them tomorrow. So let me jump forward a little bit here. I normally start this by sharing this little saying here. Sorry that somehow doesn't want us to fit all on there. Let's make that just a little bit smaller. In fact, a little bit smaller than that. Now, it's just a little simple sentence. If we all speak the same language, how come we don't all understand each other? So just in our class, some students will be thinking, I like the way this class is unstructured. I like the way it just sort of, we can take it where we want to take it. And other students will be thinking, I hate the way this class is, or I'm really challenged by the way this class is unstructured, right? So there's two very polar opposites that exist. Some students will be saying, I don't really care how the class is structured as long as we can all talk and have a good chat, you know, and we can all get to know each other. Other class students will be thinking, as long as I know how to get my work done, I don't really mind what's actually happening in the class, right? So from that very moment of conception, when you actually life was breathed into you, there was this inborn predisposition. which gives rise to ultimately to your character, which forms these little habits of life. You've had them since you were very, very young. You've always had extra curiosity. You've had shyness. You've had anger. You've had kindness. You've had all of those different things that if we were to ask your best friend to describe you, have been there for a very long time in your character. Those characters are also shaped by the nature of the environments that we share. So if we were having this class in a pub, having a few drinks, we'd be much more rowdier than we are now. If we had to go to a funeral tomorrow, we'd be much more somber. The way we interact with people at work can be quite different to the way we interact with people at home, and so on and so on. So there's lots of little environments that we engage with, on an ongoing basis. The stuff that I want to show you, and you may have come across it already in other areas, is just simply the sanguine, cleric, melancholy, phlegmatic. And the reason I use it is not because it's older than most of the other things that you've mostly done, like Myers-Briggs and stuff like that. Is because the words actually have an existing meaning in our own vocabulary, and because it's just so digestible. It's so easy for you to get your head around it and then to be able to make sense of it. And what I want you guys to be able to do is to actually think, what does it mean for you to have a particular disposition? And it's not one of these things. Obviously, it's a combination of these things, and we'll get to that in a minute. But what does it mean for you in terms of the way you frame your research, how you interpret your research, how you would share your research with other people, how you think about the nature of your idea, how you would talk to other people about the nature of that idea. So I remember many, many years ago, 1997, maybe early 1998, sitting in a little apartment in Hobart. I'd just lost everything. And so I'd gone from having quite not a lavish lifestyle in any sense, but certainly some freedom and the ability to do most of the things that I wanted to be able to do. And I'd gone from that to basically being a prisoner in a small little apartment with my young 18-month-old daughter, and $70 a week I had to pay the rent for this place. It's a bit of money for some food, and that's it. So I think before that, you go back 3 months, it cost me, let's say, $15,000 a month to live on the planet, just to be on this planet, to pay for business expenses, my own personal expenses, about 15 grand a month. And, you can imagine cash flows go up and down. Some months it's not a problem. Other months you're scratching your head, thinking, well, it's a bit stressful. Well, and then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wow, it's not too hard to find $70 a week. This is a pretty easy life. And then I read this statement. I was trying to make sense of the predicament I was in. Over your life journey, when you're most sorely tested, the answers you'll find will relate directly to what you have left in you after you've lost everything outside of yourself. And this was a real wake up for myself, because I realized that I still had my sense of humor. I still had my good health, touch wood, and I still had my confidence that if I wanted to act on my thinking, that I would still be able to do that. I didn't have all the cars and the house and a whole range of other different things, but really they didn't mean anything about me. They were just things on the outside. And so the big challenge we all face is that people see something of us, right, at the top of that iceberg. But they rarely understand what's underneath the surface. When I'm asking you to write those personal learning statements, I'm not interested in what you think above the water. I'm interested in what you feel below the water. One of my students last week said to me that she really thought it was very, she said it was in my undergraduate class, she said she thought it was totally unnecessary for me to share so many personal stories with the class. And I get that. I get that, I get people saying that, quite often actually. And what really interested me was that, and I was excited when she said it, because I thought, great, she's going to tell me why she's upset. No, she didn't. It was just it was her thinking above the water, but we didn't get to see anything below the water. And so I was disappointed that she didn't tell me why. Why did she think it was totally unnecessary to have those little stories or whatever we might want to call them. And this is the sort of the challenge I'm throwing out to you guys tonight, this nature of understanding the invisible, not just in other people, but in yourself, right? But if you don't understand it in yourself, it makes it very hard to even know how to look for the clues relative to other people. And it's very, very important. Sometimes you've only got 20 seconds to find those clues before you start moving forward. This has moved all over the place, which is a real nuisance. I'm just trying to think if I can, let's have a look here. Not really sure why that's, yeah, sorry about that. It's all gone all over the place, but you can read most of these words. But in this yellow area here, the sanguine, we've got people who are focused on leadership. They're a bit carefree, lively, talkative, responsive, easygoing, outgoing, sociable. In this corner over here, we've got the clerics. So clerics are the people we tend to view as people who have that leadership orientation. So we see them as active, optimistic, impulsive, changeable, excitable, aggressive, restless, touchy. In the phlegmatic space, so here we've got folks who might be a little bit introverted, really great contributors to the community, really interested in family, community. And we can think of them as being quite passive, careful, thoughtful, peaceful, controlled, reliable, even-tempered, calm. In this quadrant, in the bottom right-hand side, the melancholies, we've got people that can be seen to be moody, anxious, rigid, sober, pessimistic, reserved, unsociable, and quiet. Now, I live very naturally up in the top left-hand corner as a sanguine. You're not one thing. I mean, I'm a sanguine with a bit of choleric and some, increasingly, I say, some more phlegmatic. And that I can see the change over the last 15 years. I've got more phlegmatic and less choleric, and the sanguines most probably stayed pretty similar, I suppose. So you're not one thing, you're a combination, but you're very rarely strong combinations diagonally. So you're not likely to be phlegmatic and choleric because they are opposites, and you're not likely to be sanguine and melancholy. So if I show you the other slide, it might make it a bit easier to make sense of. There's a natural blend across the top, sanguine, choleric. There's a natural blend across the bottom, phlegmatic, melancholy. Likewise, there's complementary blends up the sides on sanguine, phlegmatic, and choleric, melancholy. And you can sort of see that the nature of your temperament tends to sort of direct you in either a sort of a leadership orientation, someone who likes to analyze, someone who's quite work-oriented, someone who's quite play-oriented. And obviously, again, it's the combinations of these things. And they can, if we go to a funeral tomorrow, we're going to be more phlegmatic. That side of it's going to come out. If we've got to sign very important documents tomorrow and we have to read them, we're going to be a bit more melancholy. If the fire alarm goes off, or I've got to, get to the hospital like I have in the afternoon to go and see my wife, I'm going to become a bit more choleric in the way that I try to organise things and get things happening. But if I can just go and have a few drinks with my mates in the pub, well, I'm going to be my normal sanguine old self. So as a result of these dispositions that we have, which are inherent and we've had them from the time we were conceived, we end up with these different types of dispositions towards change and towards being innovative. So sanguine people tend to want to have breakthrough results. They're viewed as being quite, passionate and imaginative, flexible, but they can also be very reckless, right? The baby can go out with the bathwater. Alternatively, the phlegmatics can be seen to be quite reserved, looking for moderate results initially, love to see everyone collaborating and working together, love to find ways to empower other people to have those shared values, can be seen as being very thoughtful and sometimes a bit pessimistic, a bit gloomy because they might not be quite as optimistic as the other people around them. Conversely, the melancholy people can be seen to want incremental results as well, but they might want to move even slower in a very methodical and risk-averse way. And they're very good at being able to solve problems, but can be viewed sometimes as sort of spoiling the party because they're very rigid in how things should be approached. And then we have the clerics who want those fast, quick results. So very action orientation, want to be able to have measured success, very driven, but also could be seen as being a bit bossy. So I'm curious in your own worlds, how you see yourself fitting across these areas, remembering that you're not one, you're a combination of these things. And typically, like in my case, I think out of 40 questions, I'd be 25 in Sanguine, and then I'd mostly be, these days, about 10 in Phlegmatic and maybe 5 over in Cleric. And really very little happening for me in the melancholy world, because that's the world of the organised, the data-driven, you know, and that's not me. Any thoughts there, guys, in terms of where you see yourselves or past temperament tests you've done that sort of relate to this thinking? Where have we gone?
Colin, are you reading the chat? Because some people haven't got the microphone.
Haven't got me? Oh, they haven't got their microphones on. Okay, sorry.
Well, yeah, are you reading the chat? Because there's Max has asked the name of the test, the Sanguine, Choleric, Melancholy, Phlegmatic test. What is it known as?
Yeah. Look, unfortunately, the test used to be, if you just type in Sanguine test, Max, or Cleric test, any of those 4 things test, you'll find a test for it. There used to be just a brilliant test online that was so easy to do, and it just disappeared overnight. The really cool thing about that test was that you might say, let's say that you got all 40 questions for Sanguine, right? As in 40 answers. For each one of those, there's positives and negatives. So just being one thing doesn't mean a lot. You've also got to be able to actually understand the balance that you need between, like if you're a cleric and you're very driven and you're an excellent leader, that's great. But if you're a bully and a very bossy person, that's not good traits to have. So there's positive and negative traits for all of these things. And it's a matter of trying to minimize the negative and hopefully try to cash in on the positive ones. So I'll try and find another online test.
Stephen's written and said it's called the 4 Temperaments test.
Yeah. So you can find David Kersey's work. I've got it on my bookshelf. You can find, and fortunately he changed his names. He went to Artisan and a few other little bits and pieces. But yeah, 4 Temperaments test. David Kersey was doing it back in his book, Please Understand Me. So that's a good place to start in terms of reading through these things. I mean, what makes it really interesting is if you do something like this, it's so digestible. That's what makes it really good, is all of a sudden you look at the partner or the people you live your lives with, and then you try, oh gosh, I'm sanguine, but my wife is melancholy. No wonder I drive her insane, right? No wonder she drives me insane, right? And so then you can start to understand, well, where the compromises need to be. Now, that's just in your permanent sort of interactions in life. But when you walk into somebody's office and you can see their desk and you see, it would be awesome to take a similar class, see where we land. Yeah. And so the thing with it, Max, is that you get to get a really nice understanding of you being, say, NFJ. But ultimately, you've got 16 different combinations at play with the Briggs-Meyer, and it's impossible for anyone to sit down at a table of 5 people and actually get a real sense of what those other 4 people are, you know, and therefore it's very difficult to actually use. You can actually start thinking this through to such an extent that you can start looking at people's clothes, and it starts to help you eliminate what they most probably are not, right? So you can look at you can look at my clothes and you can say, I don't think he's the cleric, right? Because clerics take quite a deal of pride in their clothes. And to be honest with you, I actually try to be the worst dressed person in the room. I actually don't want people to notice me, right? And like I would start classes, first class of the year, I'd sit down with students and I would talk to them. And I was only in my early 30s. They thought I was mostly just a mature age student there. And then once the time was for ready to start, I'd get up and start talking and be like, gee, that guy's the bloody lecturer, what's going on there? I did it because I actually didn't want, if I wore a suit, they'd say, oh, he must be important, must be the lecturer. Let's listen to him. I didn't want people to be listening to me all the time. I wanted them to talk amongst themselves. So the way we dress says something. Look inside someone's car. That says another thing. How is it? It's a car that's always clean and is kept really, really tidy. They're not sanguine and they're not phlegmatic.
Cleric.
It's as simple as that, right? So then you might start thinking how you might talk to them from a different perspective, right? Because remember what we said? Well, you might have missed the slide before, but I said if we all speak the same language, how come we don't always understand each other, right? So to go back a couple of steps, I'll just show, and I'll take this off the board, the little, so I can't, actually, what I'll do, I'll just try and get a bit clever with this. I'm not sure I can, but just chuck that down there for a minute. I'll chuck that up there. So if you look at these pictures here, these pictures, this is supposed to be 4 choleric pictures, but one of them doesn't belong there. Have a guess, guys. You can either type in or just yell it out. Which one of these pictures isn't a choleric picture? The first one. Rochelle, come on. Which is the top left? Okay, thank you. No, top left, Lil. No, that's okay. So we've eliminated top left. What else? Which one else could it be if it wasn't top left? No. So now you've got a real chance now. You've got sort of bottom right. No. Who wants to have the next guess? Yay! Well done, Rochelle. So if you look at these pictures, for clerics, cleric is all about achievement. When you walk into the office of a cleric person, you'll see their university certificates, you'll see any other training course they've done, you'll see things that represent achievement, right? There might be a picture with them standing next to someone famous, but it's pictures of achievement, right? So there'll be artifacts of that achievement. In the bottom left picture is just a phlegmatic picture. It's just family. It's just a simple, we love being with each other picture. Whereas at the top, we thought we'd go out and shoot something. We shot something. We got a trophy. Top right, we went for a run. We finished. Yay. Bottom right, our daughter went to university. She graduated. We're really happy, right? So achievement, but we've got one that's just simply about family. What about this one here? These are melancholy pictures. So which one of these pictures doesn't belong? Which one's not a melancholy picture? Very good, Stephen. Why would that be the case? Yep, well done, Rochelle. Yeah, it's the nightclub at the top, and well, mate, I think what you mean by that is they're structured, Stephen. I think that's what you're saying. So in the top right and the ones on the bottom, there is a set way of actually doing this dance, right? Whereas in the nightclub, it's just whatever's happening on the night, yeah? Whatever music's playing, whatever crowd's walked in. So it's just an unorganised thing that's actually happening. What about in these ones here? These are phlegmatic pictures. So one of these pictures doesn't belong. Remember what I said about phlegmatic people? They're fantastic with communities. Yep. So not so much the structured, but it is top right. So the really cool thing about phlegmatic people is that you'll find them at all local events. They're just there, right? So whether they're volunteering to come along and referee the umpiring or whatever that is in bottom left and a boxing match. Whereas the guy in the top right here, that guy's a very cleric type position. He's a professional referee. He's being paid a good salary to actually instruct and keep the order in this soccer game. What about our last one? This is the sanguine pictures. So which one of these doesn't belong in the sanguine sort of world? One of them's a bit misleading, but I apologise for that. Top left, no. No, you're most probably right, Max. I put that picture there. Why do you say that, Max? Let me just tease that out of you first. Because in reality, the real answer is top. Yeah, Dreamscape. Yeah. When I put that picture in the bottom right one, I actually thought it's just this crazy assortment of Legos, but I've since found out it's actually a very specific type of creation. The top right one was the picture I put in there. Yeah, that's what it is. Well done. The top right I put in there because that's what they're actual for. The actual Lego bricks were, that's the design to build that car, right? Whereas the ones on the right left hand side, they're just Legos that are in any sort of format. So think about it. When you get given Lego bricks, you got one of two choices. You can just build the Legos in with your other Legos, or just build something else, or you can get the instructions out and you say, what's step one? What's step two? Yeah. And the car is the desired result of the people who gave you the instructions, right? Whereas the other ones are just made up on how they're made up. I mean, you say Escher, Max, I think you say Escher, but yeah, that actually is a particular design, isn't it? But I wasn't smart enough to know that when I put that picture in there. And so to give you another example, if we're going to sell a car to somebody, if we can identify that it's a phlegmatic person coming in, then we're going to focus very much on safety features of the car, its reliability, the fact that it's very popular amongst families, and maybe it's affordable for a family, those sorts of things. If we've got a melancholy person that we're dealing with, well, we're going to focus very much on the fuel efficiency, the type of warranty that's been afforded to it, the type of awards that it's won, sort of information that the average person might not be really that interested in. Might be something to do with motors, other specs stuff that they might actually want to have that information at their hand. If we're giving it to a sanguine person, we might be really more about sort of saying to them that, look, imagine the fun you could have on the weekend with this. It's got a good tank. It'll get you up the coast, down the coast. Good sound system. It's got hands-free phones so you can talk to all your friends while you drive along the highway, so on and so on. What would we do with a cleric person? How would we sell a car to a cleric person? Cleric people don't really like to be told what to do. They really want to have their own way. They want to be in control. So what would be a good strategy for trying to sell a car to a cleric person? What do you think, guys? You've got a car sitting in front of you and you've got someone that you've identified as most probably not wanting to be told how to suck eggs. So how might you sell them that car? Yeah, I'm just trying to see where the rest of this goes, Stephen. I can see some of your in here, but I can't see it all, what they want from the car. Yeah, yeah. What else could you do? Yeah, tell them it's good value, although they'll want to be the judge of that. What else do you think you could do to let someone else make up their own mind? They don't want someone, they don't want to feel like they've been sold. Yeah, you could do that. You can get a little bit of reverse psychology. Yeah. What would be the easiest way, Stephen, to get them to make their own choice? You mean Rochelle want to get in the car? I think that's where you're heading, Rochelle, if they want to get in the car. Okay, there you go, Mario. That's it, Mario. You've got it. Just give them the keys. Just say, it's a fantastic car. If you would like to get a sense of how this car drives, offer them the keys. Offer them an opportunity to take it for a drive. If they like it, they might buy it. If they don't, they won't, right? But you can't, no amount of telling them that it's a great car is actually going to get them to want to buy the car, because they don't want to be sold. They want to make up their own mind. So let them do that. Put them in the car. If they come back and have convinced themselves, once they convince themselves, many clerics are very, very hard to actually change their mind, right? So so that's a simple way. I'm going to see if I can find a test for you guys. The ones that I've been finding of late require you to go through the process of putting in your email account, and then you know you're going to get emails from someone. So I've avoided doing those ones. This other one I had, it didn't require that at all. It just gave you the results online. It was fantastic, and you could just press print and you had them, it was really, really cool test. But hello, Lil to the rescue. Let's see what Lil's come up with here. Got the big 5. Other online tests. The nerdy personality attribute scale. That's an interesting one. Here we are, the 4 temperaments. Okay. Oh, it looks like we've got our 40 questions there too. All right, so well done, Lil. You might have saved the day. So why don't you give that a go, guys? I've got to nick off to the hospital soon too. So thanks, Mario. I'd be interested for us to have a chat about that. And what I'm curious about is you guys taking the time. Sometimes we don't get into these things. They're a reality, right? They are a reality because we only have to walk into each other's offices to actually find all of the different clues that we need. That it doesn't mean we can know somebody instantly without having talked to them. We can start to eliminate things, and that's an important part of the process. What's the most important part of the process is that we circumvent this automatic processing of our mind by allowing ourselves to start asking questions. So when we meet somebody, instead of just allowing our brain to just take us through that process automatically, we can start thinking, I wonder, am I dealing with a sanguine person here, or a melancholy, maybe a phlegmatic? And as we start asking ourselves those questions, we become very, very attuned to the situation. We start looking for these little clues. And when we notice it when someone sort of gives us the, maybe. So rather than just moving on from that, we're thinking, oh, okay, they don't want the data, right? So then we might just chuck in imagine if we see their eyelids pop up. We think, oh, it's taking me into a future world. Talk to me, give me more of that. And, you'll always do well with me if you send me your assignment and the first word is imagine. This is not really a joke, guys. But why not? Put the first word of your assignment as imagine. Because I'm a hopeless, why not? I am a hopeless sanguine. I really am. I love living in tomorrow, even though I love reflecting, right? I love living in the possibilities and opportunities of tomorrow, right? But I also love it, the fact that if you're doing it, it's because you're also thinking through. I used to have quite a few students who would send me their work from Launceston, which is, a couple of hours away. And there would be a packet of lollies in the thing, and they'd say, I hope these lollies help you while you're marking my assignment goal, right? So it's not a $20 note. It's not a $50 note. It's from a conversation that we had where I said, oh, yeah, I don't eat a lot of lollies, but if I do eat one lolly, bang, I'll eat 10, And I love it when a student's thinking like that. Because what are you doing when you hand in an assignment? If you don't think of yourself as selling something, well, then you've missed an opportunity. Now, I know it's difficult sometimes because you're told it has to be on this paper, has to have this margin, it has to be this way, and it's almost like standardized. Every possibility of creativity is being taken out of it. But that's not the case this semester. So think about the nature of your idea and think about how you can bring your thinking and your passion or your dismissiveness, doesn't really matter what it is, how you can bring that to life in presenting it, right? Because if you present it to me face to face or over the phone, then we've got a layer of emotion in that presentation that doesn't exist typically on a piece of paper. But you can, right? You can do that, right? There's lots of different ways to do it. And when you take risks, I get excited when you take risks because that's not normally what people do. And yet that's what's required for people to actually be doing when they're trying to pursue a new idea that we don't know the outcome of. Otherwise, everyone would just go and bank those new ideas tomorrow, yeah? So that's that challenge for you in thinking forward, how it actually is that you might want to present your thinking. There's your thinking, but if we all speak the one language, how come we don't always understand each other? So I'm pretty easy in the sense that I really am a shameless sanguine, right? So it's not too difficult to actually work out who you're pitching to, right? But if you're somebody who mostly identifies more in the melancholy space, then that might seem quite a risk for you to actually move in and try to present something in a way that might not typically be your normal way of approaching things, right? So that's a challenge. Whereas if you're phlegmatic, it's just about lightening up a little bit, but you've still got that playfulness in there, right? So I'll leave that with you to think through. I'm going to do your test, Lil. I'm going to work through these and see what it actually, for the sake of it, let's just, whoops. I just want to see what it actually spits out at the other end. Has anyone done it yet?
Yeah.
What did you get?
Apparently I'm melancholic.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Are you disappointed that you got melancholy?
No, it's like there's a small difference between my melancholic and phlegmatic. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is that the American presidents up until Trump, so the first 44 American presidents, were dead set equally, 11 all, split across the 4 temperaments. So there isn't a preferred temperament. Please, short survey. There you go. Typical for me. That's all right. I'll have to try that. You have completed to access the results. Okay. So, I mean, obviously, in that sense, I have not done it particularly well. But go through and do it as accurately as you can on those questions. Try not to think about what it means to answer each of those questions, because it's very easy to sit there, you know, when you're doing these for work and things like that, and you think, you know, you get the question that says, if you walked into a party and there were people there, would you A, talk to them, B, not talk to them, or C, do something else? Now, if the job was for sales, you sort of know that if you don't say, I would go over and talk to the, you know, introduce myself to these new people, that's the right answer. So sometimes when you're doing the test, you already know what they would prefer you to give the answer to. So another challenge, another way of doing this is if you've got a partner or a best friend or someone who knows you really, really well, get them to fill in those questions, those answers for you, right? So you're not sort of having this bias of trying to make yourself look a bit better than you think you are. Get someone to actually fill it in. And then you can also get your best friend at work to fill it in, right? And you might find that you are different at work. You know, you're more in charge, you're more cleric at work because of the nature of your position. But when you're at home, you actually might be more phlegmatic, you know, which is why sometimes people find this real difficulty about, I've got to go to work, because they're actually having to be something that maybe they're actually not, right? But it's pays the bills, it gets things done, yeah? So we all struggle with these things. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and that's always the challenge. There'll always be that bit of bias, but, you know, try to be as honest. It's for you. The information's for you, so it doesn't really matter how, you know, how it is. But it's not being sanguine or it's not being choleric that matters. And this test doesn't give it to you, unfortunately. But the other test used to give you the breakdown of, okay, you've got you're 70% sanguine, and of that 70%, half of them are negative traits and half of them are positive, right? So, you know, you were really unorganized, lazy, and you were also really sociable and really inspirational. So people have to sort of take the good and the bad with you, whereas in a perfect world, you can start to eliminate some of the things that would be upsetting to people while retaining the strengths of your temperament as well. So what I'll do is I'll circulate you a little bit more information that can help you to sort of reflect on this. And then I will send you this little, the personal learning statement, the number 4, which will be based on your thinking on this. But I want you to think about the nature of you developing an idea and investigating an idea. And what does it mean when you actually bring into account the nature of your temperament, right? Because if you're a melancholy person, maybe you're not going to be happy with any of the results of your research unless you feel you've done a really, really good way of doing that research. If you're sanguine, maybe you only needed one person to say they liked your idea. And then you'll tell everyone, everyone loves it. Everyone loves it, right? Yeah? Which, you know, I must admit, I'm guilty of that. If I give you a number, you should cut the number in half. If I said there were 30 people there last night and they loved it, it most probably means there was 15 people there. You know, I don't consider myself to be a liar, but exaggerating things is it's a classic sanguine thing, because it's that storytelling thing. You don't talk things down in stories. You actually talk things up, you know. That's why stories take on a life of their own. You know, they don't shrink down and become less interesting. They just find a way to become more interesting, you hope. So anyway, let's get back to our standard little space here, guys. I don't know where I've put my participants. Is there no deadline? Yeah, no, there's no worries with that, Mario. I'm hoping to get it up tomorrow, but I want to put a bit more information around it, because obviously with only 18, that's a third of the class. Not everyone's going to be in it. I might do a little a video capture and a quick overview of some of this stuff and give you something to read in relation to this. That might be an easier way to get you to sort of try and locate yourself. And plus with that test that Lil's sent through to us as well. But you don't, again, no need to rush it. And we might actually even find it's easier for us just to, to wait. We've got plenty of time because we've got quite a few. We've got the 5th one to do. And then the last one really is just what have you learned about yourself and entrepreneurship during the subject. So the last one sort of takes care of itself. It's more really just the 4th one. I think I haven't got that many more to mark. I think I've only got a few sitting in front of me to mark, and that's okay. But I'd most probably suggest if you haven't got number 1 or 2 done, most probably try and jump in and get that done. And then you can work your way through 3, get 4 done, and then you'll be well placed. Can I just suggest to you that if you've got any queries, questions in relation to your research and moving forward with your project, just reach out to me and say, can we make a time? You only have to give me your phone number. I'll ring you back, or you can ring me. I'm going to be away for most of this week, I now suspect, but I'll be in the office during, from next week sort of onwards. So, but you can talk to me anytime during the week. That's not a problem. I'll be next to my phone, so no dramas at all. But is there any questions, queries, guys, out there?
Colin, I've got a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely, Steve.
So I'm looking to try and get in touch with some professors, lecturers from completely different faculties and business schools, specifically creative media and engineering.
Yeah. And
I just wondered what the protocol was for me to literally just go and door knock them and just ask them the questions that I want to ask. Basically, I'm going to try and get some market research from some engineers at the university. I've reached out by email, but I haven't got anything back. I don't want to leave it there, but nor do I want to sort of, kind of go too far, if you like.
No, I would most probably, I think if I was in your shoes, yeah, that's a good question. Do they have to be university engineers?
Possibly not. No, they don't actually. No, they don't have to be university engineers. That was just my first poll.
Yeah. Lil's saying she works with heaps of engineers. This actually raises a really good point in relation to we had one survey being put online this week in the message board. And so I'll set up a discussion board for you guys for data. So if anyone's got surveys and they think that there are people in the class that could do the surveys and give you data that's meaningful, let's just put them online, and then people can go in, grab the link, and then you can start putting some survey into there. But because, yeah, we've all got, the class does represent, it's a very diverse body of people. And if you're looking at something, well, you can already start getting some data to start with. So, yeah, that's a much easier way. Max, Steve, did you just get Lil's? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm typing away as I am listening. No, that's perfect, Lil. Thank you very much for that. So with regards to actually sort of just literally I've worked out, I've found out where these guys live. Yeah. I don't mean literally, I mean in the university.
Don't knock on their doors at home.
So, I mean, am I okay literally just to my feeling is they're probably not going to be in their room, so it's going to be a bit pointless, but
yeah. I'd ring them up. I'd ring them on the phone.
Okay, cool.
If you rang me, I mean, I wouldn't turn you away, but there are plenty of people in universities who would, right? And so you'd never quite know where they're at in terms of how much marking's sitting in front of them.
Yeah.
And I've got colleagues I work with who won't let me come into their office to talk to them, right? So they won't even let their colleagues come in. They're so precious of their time. So, but if you took a phone call from them, I think they're less likely to hang up on you than they are to sort of say, I'm busy face to face.
Okay.
That'd be just my hunch on it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll go with that first, and I'll get in touch with Lil as well. Thanks,
Yeah,
Colin.
yeah, and plus, of course, then that means you can also ring people at other universities as well.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to get this message board set up for you guys. We'll call the message board. The message board will actually be just called surveys or something like that, right? So you'll see it. I'll send out a little email once I've put it there, and you can just go in there and just add a thread, and it'll just simply be, here's the link to my survey, and that should get everybody moving. And maybe just put who you think who it's intended to. So you can sort of say, here's the link to my survey. I'd love anyone in the class to do it. Here's the link to my survey. Really looking for women aged 20 to 30 to do this. So if you've got friends who are that age, can you share it on your Facebook? And if we all start sharing stuff on our Facebook, I think that'll work fine. You'll get more than enough data. But just if it is a bit specific, just let us know what it is, because you don't want to get a whole bunch of data from guys who are 45 if you're really trying to understand what girls who are in their mid-20s are thinking about something. Anything else, guys? Anything else that anyone would like to ask? This should become one of those auctioners. Going once. Going twice. Not really sold, but I think you know where we're all just got to. We've cleared the space. All right, guys. I'll circulate something which will have Lil's test on it. We'll have some information, written information, and I'll find something a little bit about, even if I just make up a very short little video as well, about the nature of what we've just talked about, just to refresh people's thinking. And the main thing, again, I want you to sort of be thinking about you. Thank you very much, Lil. What actually happened, just so you sort of understand the context of all of this, my wife has a pacemaker. She went in to have her check today, which was really to sort of be told how much battery was left. And it was like she's had it for 9 years, so it was like most probably you're going to have to get it changed soon. But when she got in there, she said she'd had a few problems in terms of some funny feelings. And they did a diagnostic test, and they found out that the lead from the pacemaker to her heart is broken. It's like intermittent. If they were tapping on the chest, it was actually it was creating this little sensation she could feel. And so they didn't want to let her out of the hospital. So they sort of said, no, we need to change the lead and we need to change the pacemaker. So she just went in there with one of my kids for the half-an-hour appointment and basically got held hostage. So she's stuck there still until such time as they do whatever they're going to do. So, yep, you can be lucky. You can be lucky because these things... she's actually been complaining of the sensation for a while, but none of the specialists have taken her seriously. But this time they actually thought, let's look at the lead, and they found something wrong with the lead. So just goes to show you, sometimes you get anxiety about things, but sometimes it's not anxiety. It actually is, you are reacting to your body. It's just other people don't understand what you're trying to say. Not that I would have ever doubted her, of course. So all right, guys, bid you all farewell for the evening. Thanks very much for coming along, and I'll be back in touch with you guys tomorrow with some other bits and pieces, and we'll go from there. Any queries, questions, obviously just give us a tingle. Yeah, cheerio, guys.